Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Molly. I'm the maker behind Lefty Knits, and this is my corner of the internet where I discuss the crafty things I've been getting up to, mostly knitting. As you can tell by this pile of yarn I have next to me, perhaps, we're going to be talking about my plans for 2023. I hope you all had a great holiday season and a great new year. It's a few days into the new year as I record this, and I know I had a nice relaxing time leading into kind of a crazy start to the new year, which hasn't quite kicked off yet, but it's on its way. The last video I made was a couple weeks ago as I was preparing to go to Alabama to visit my boyfriend's family. I think maybe next week in my podcast episode that I'm planning to make, I will show the end of my Stitch Marker advent calendar, a few of the crafty things I got up to, the things that I got in Huntsville yarn-wise, and, you know, knitting related wise. There is a little bit of that today, but today I want to share my Make 9 for 2023. So I've never done one of these before. I tend to have kind of a deep queue of knitting. I don't really plan out very well what I'm going to do next or when I'll work on the projects that I'm buying yarn for. And that's something that I want to stop doing this year. I want to be intentional with my yarn choices. Obviously, I'm on a graduate student budget, which is pretty limited, but I don't want to just be buying yarn that I don't have ideas for because it's on sale or because it's cheap. I want to make sure that I am curating a stash that I like and using the yarn that I buy within, you know, a reasonable time after I buy it. And I don't really have an idea of what that is. I have an idea of what might be a little unreasonable, but which we'll talk about later. Buying yarn is definitely like a hobby of mine, semi-separate from knitting. Obviously, a lot of people talk about sort of these two hobbies, and I agree that there's some difference to them, but I want to make sure that my yarn buying hobby is generally in service of my knitting hobby. I don't want to overload my stash. I live in a small apartment. Who knows? I don't know where I'll be living in the next, 6 to 12 months. I will be finishing graduate school. I'll be looking for a job. I could have to move. I don't want to have to move that much stuff. So I'm hoping to, for the first 3 months of the year or so, limit the amount that I'm bringing into my stash and maximize the amount of things going out of my stash. The intention behind my Make 9 is using things that I have with a couple slight exceptions. I'm not going to tell myself that I won't buy any yarn. I think if there's special yarn that I find somewhere, I'm out visiting a new store or something. It is my birthday at the end of the month, so I'm not going to set expectations for myself that I'm pretty sure I'll break, but I really want to be intentional about my use of yarn, and I'm making this list to hold myself accountable. You're seeing me say this, so that'll help me do it. I do plan on doing a bit of a stash down this year, so I haven't counted what I have yet. I don't really want to at this point, but once I finish a few projects, I might. And I do want to keep track of kind of what I'm bringing in and what's going out. So I'll be sharing that with you as the year goes on. So all of my Make 9 projects use yarn that I have in stash. I have already bought, at the end of last year technically, 2 yarns to go with things that I have to complete projects on this list, and it's possible I'll buy a 3rd yarn for it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. These are by no means the only things I plan to knit. All of these are things I'm knitting for myself, and I will be knitting some things for others at various points. So this is not it by any means, but these are the things that I'm really telling myself I want to get done. I want to get these things out of stash, and I'm ready to do that. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first project I want to talk about is the Textbook Cowl by Casey Herlihy. I have a feeling this will be the first thing I make in the year, the first project I cast on this year and finished this year. It's a cowl pattern knit in worsted weight yarn, and for that I'm going to use this Cape Cod Yarn Company yarn. The base, I believe, is called Mashpee, and it's 180 yards for 100 grams. This is from the store Adventures in Knitting in, I want to say, Harwich, Massachusetts. It is on Cape Cod. I have family there, and I went in October 2021 for my cousin's wedding. So I bought this while I was there. I didn't really have a plan for it. I just liked the color. And so in looking at this skein, thinking about it, and realizing that I wore the cowls that I made last year a lot. I made them in like the second half of the year. I was wearing them all the time in Huntsville. I've been wearing them all the time here in what counts for our colder weather. So, you know, cowls have been really nice to have, and I have really found that they're a great way to use up a single skein of basically any weight of yarn, but especially a single skein of DK worsted Aran bulky. When I buy singles of those, I don't have as much of a plan, and they don't feel as flexible as, say, a skein of fingering. I might wear a fingering weight hat more than I'd wear a worsted weight hat here in the Bay Area. It feels like a good way for me to use up some heavier weight yarn, especially as I found myself wearing cowls more often. That's my first project. It's a lace cowl, and I will be using this special skein that I got about 15 months ago. My second project for my Make 9 is the Botanic Shawl by Stephen West. So for that, I'll be using this Stroll gradient yarn in the colorway Prickly Pear, and a skein of natural off-white yarn that is coming. And the yarn that I plan to use for this is Valley Yarn Charlemont, which is, I think it's meant to be a sock yarn. It's merino, silk, and nylon. Essentially, I bought this skein of Stroll Gradient on a pretty deep discount. I don't recall exactly what the price was, but it was one of their sales. I don't know if they have any Stroll Gradient left. It's one 458 yard skein, or cake, I guess, of 100 grams. So, you know, you can make socks with this, but they would be 2 different socks, which is fine. But I bought it thinking maybe I would make like a tee out of it or a tank out of it. But as I've been finding with cowl making, I like having stuff around my neck. I have been working on my Current Mood shawl, which I talked about on here a couple times. This is backwards. So I brought this to Huntsville as kind of my complicated project to cast on. It's about halfway done. I think the halfway point was here. I have really been enjoying it. I'm looking forward to having this to wear. I have spoken on Instagram a couple times that my office is very cold, and I kind of anticipate, if I am in an environment where I'm going back to the office again as I pursue career opportunities post finishing my graduate degree, I think having more shawls will be nice. So I plan on making the Botanic shawl. It's a 2 yarn triangle shawl. It'll be my first triangle shawl. When I was looking through the projects on Ravelry made with Stroll Gradient, I came across somebody who had made this shawl. I thought it looked really nice. Yeah, I'm excited to enter the realm of shawl knitting. It's never really been my thing. I didn't think of myself as a shawl person, but I'm feeling drawn to shawls these days and sort of neckwear in general in a way that I haven't since I was living in Boston and generally feeling much colder. So I'm excited to see where this project takes me. I will be using much less yarn than the pattern calls for maybe not much less, but I'm just planning on using these two skeins, this and the white one, the natural colored one that I'm getting, until I run out. I don't know exactly how big it'll be, but that'll be like 800 to 900 yards probably, so I think it'll be pretty big, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this turns out. My third project is the Viva Cami by Ksenia Naidion. I'm hoping I'm not saying that too badly. Her handle is Life is Cozy on Instagram. It's a two-colored sort of chevron patterned camisole, and I am, look at this disaster. I'm using Squish Fingering yarn by Farmer's Daughter Fibers. Now, I got this at the Farmer's Daughter store in Great Falls, Montana, when I went there with my boyfriend's family in August of 2021. I bought this for this project. This colorway is called Winter Wolf. I do not know what this colorway is called, but as you can see, this is a hot mess. This was about the time that I decided that I was done with my with my winder. My boyfriend has generously gotten me a new one. He got it for our anniversary and it works better, so I'll probably be rewinding this in the near future, and hopefully it won't be too much of a headache. This yarn was the yarn that was called for by the pattern. It's like the suggested yarn. It was something that I had planned to buy when I got there, was 2 skeins of the Squish Fingering, which is a 100% superwash merino yarn, 438 yards for 100 grams. I really liked this pattern. I enjoy a chevron, so I think it will be something I enjoy knitting and enjoy wearing in the warmer months. I'm just, you know, committing myself to making the things that I have told myself I wanted to make, and using the yarn that I bought for specific projects, and I think this one will be fun. So that is my third project of the year. My fourth project is the Quill Tee by Tiff Nealon. It is a fingering weight, short sleeve sweater essentially, and it has a colorwork circular yoke. Now, this is the only project where I don't have the main color yarn yet. This is something I purchased at the end of 2022, and it's actually supposed to arrive today, but it's not here yet. So I don't have anything with me to show you, because the other yarn I plan to use is Bear Stroll Fingering from Knit Picks. So it's just like a natural off-white color. I just really like the colorwork yoke on this. I think it looks very like delicate and pretty. The yarn that I've chosen I'll include a picture of, but it's kind of like a similar color to this, I guess. I think it's a little bit less variegated than this, but I might be wrong. It's not here yet, so I'm not sure. I just think this will be something that I'll enjoy knitting. I think it would be a great addition to my wardrobe. I have an Anchor summer shirt that I wear quite a lot, and I haven't really made any fingering weight tees, which I think I would enjoy having. I think they'll be great for the weather here in California. Like I said, that's predicated on me staying in California, but we'll see. Either way, I think that it'll be a nice item for my wardrobe and a fun knit. I don't do too much color work, but I think that it's a very like classic nice pattern, so I'm looking forward to that one. My fifth project is kind of a fun one. I'll be making the Nevermore blouse by Kadri, which is a V-neck sort of cropped sweater, I guess, with a lace pattern going down the back and sleeves, and I will be making it in a Bucksnort Alpaca Ranch yarn. The colorway is called Shooter. Shooter is in fact the name of the alpaca that produced this yarn. This is from a ranch in Grant, Alabama, which is, I've been told, in sort of North Alabama, close to Huntsville. I got this at Sparkle Studio in Huntsville, which is in a old mill, low mill, that's been converted into like a makerspace studio art place. It's super cool. I highly recommend it if you're in the area. And Sparkle Studio is a yarn studio there, and they stock this yarn from Bucksnort Alpaca Ranch. And This is a worsted weight yarn. It is 100% alpaca. This is all from Shooter. It's 200 yards for 3 ounces, which is like, I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of like 80 to 90 grams. I'm really excited to knit with this. I looked at Sparkle Studio as a place to go when I was looking for yarn stores in Huntsville. I was super excited to see that they had some local yarn there. I haven't worked too much with alpaca, but I'm excited to. And when I was sort of looking at the different projects that were available to me for the amount of yarn I had for worsted weight yarn, you know, looking for something that would work with alpaca being a little bit drapier, a little less structured than wool, having less memory than wool, this pattern seemed like a pretty good fit. So I'm extremely excited to be working with this yarn. Can't wait to show you how this knits up. So my next pattern that I'll be making is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. I would say generally a pretty well-known pattern in the knitting world, and I plan on making it with this woolly knit British wool yarn cone. This is a fingering weight cone, and I will be holding it together with this Lana Gross's silk hair. So I had bought this silk hair. I've talked about all of this previously, actually. I bought this silk hair to pair with the main yarn for my next project, actually. It seemed a little too dark. I wasn't super happy with the way it looked, and I ended up ordering this British wool cone to go with it. It's a little bit more green than I was expecting, but I think that this will pair pretty nicely. And I ordered this during the Knitting Traditions and Woolly Knit celebration of British wool. I'm really excited to work on this. I think I'll be holding this woolly knit yarn double. I know the Ranunculus is meant to be knit at a pretty loose gauge. It's meant to be knit with fingering weight yarn or some sort of light yarn generally, but I think I'm going to try to make it a little more fitted. I haven't bought the pattern yet, so I'm not like totally sure all the modifications I'll make, but I think I'll probably go with the smallest size, because I want to say the smallest size is like 40 some inches at the bust, and I have a 36-inch bust, and I don't love like a huge amount of positive ease, so that's probably what I'll do. And I'll be making gauge swatches, sort of seeing how I feel about things, and I bet I'll be making some adjustments. But I think that these two yarns together will make a very fun ranunculus. I'm excited to work on that pattern and see what all the fuss is about. So this is what I'll be using for that. Now, my next project I've actually spoken about. I acquired these yarns as I've been podcasting. So I haven't had them for a super long time, but I'm going to be making the My Time sweater by Lily Kate France. It is a notch neck sweater with long sleeves that have, I think they're dropped stitches that sort of create this fun like stripey effect. I think it's just very beautiful, and I'm going to be using Scopius terrazzo. I think that's approximately correct, and Valley Yarn Southampton. So these are the yarns. I've talked about this pretty in depth on various other episodes, so I won't be revisiting that here, but this is a pattern that I have been really excited about since I saw Lily Kate post it on Instagram. Can't wait to have this sweater for myself. This is definitely a knit where I'm equally excited about the final project or the final product as I am about the project itself. I think it'll be really fun to knit, and I think it'll be beautiful to wear. And as I mentioned in previous podcasts and earlier when I was talking about my ranunculus, I bought these two to hold together, found that this was too dark, and switched to this Valley Yarns, which is a pretty close match. So I'm excited to have this join my wardrobe. I think it could potentially function in a more corporate environment like I may be going into post grad school. Either way, I'm really excited to have this sweater. I think it'll look beautiful in these yarns, and can't wait. The 8th project I have is the Shifty by Andrea Mowry. And I'm going to be using these yarns. This is Cascade Heritage Wave. So I bought the pattern for Shifty in 2019, I think, and I bought these yarns in 2020. So this is the project that's been in my queue for the longest, by far, I would say. I sort of was immediately taken by the sweater when I saw the photos of it. I was just like blown away by it. I had actually never knit a sweater at that point. So, but I was like, I need to make this sweater. And I set out trying to find sort of the perfect yarns for it. I wanted something that looked semi-similar to the samples that Andrea Mowry made, but I just couldn't at that point justify spending spin cycle money on the sweater. And so I bought these Cascade Heritage Wave yarns. My main color will be this brown, and the other three will be my contrast colors. This is a serious project, you know, it's mosaic color work, so except for the yoke, which and the short rows on the yoke. So it's not, you know, stranded color work mostly, which helps, but you know, it's an undertaking doing a fingering weight colorwork sweater. One I don't think I've actually ever undertaken, at least not like this. These yarns have been sitting in my stash for like 2 years now, and I'm ready to finally get them out of my stash, make this sweater. It's something that I think will actually fit really well into my wardrobe and something I'll wear a lot. So I'm excited to have the final product and hoping that it looks good. And it's one of those things that I've been putting off, and I need to stop putting it off. So you've heard it here first. I'll be making the Shifty in 2023. Now we're at my final project on my Make 9, and that is the September sweater by Petite Knit. I am planning on using this Simply Wool twist yarn from Knit Picks. It is a worsted weight 100% wool yarn. It is 218 yards for 100 grams, and I have the colorway Winkle and Wanda. Now this is a yarn that I got a sweater's quantity of. I got 7 skeins of this, which is like 1,500 grams probably. No, 1,500 yards. So I can definitely make a sweater out of this, and it was on sale. I don't believe they offer the Simply Wool twist anymore, at least not like as a separate yarn. It might be listed under their Simply Wool worsted weight. Anyway, I don't know what the status of this yarn is. I just am pretty certain that they were discontinuing it, which is why I got it on deep discount, and I got a sweater's quantity of it without a plan. I've thought about making a ranunculus with this. I thought about a few things, but the September sweater is a pattern that I bought quite a while ago. I made most of a sweater. Like I made the whole body and a sleeve with a yarn that I just don't think was the absolute best choice for the September sweater. It was a superwash, relatively budget wool, and I just think it was like a little smooth for the September sweater. I'm a little bit worried now, knowing what I know and having worked with various kinds of wool, that it would have stretched quite a lot, given that this is a brioche project. So I just wasn't like, plus, probably most importantly, I was absolutely terrible at fixing mistakes in brioche at that point. So there were a lot of mistakes that I'd kind of not really been able to fix, and they were just really obvious because the yarn was so smooth and like circular, and there was no like halo or anything to kind of hide these mistakes. So I just wasn't happy with it, and I frogged it. But I think this yarn will work better. This is a non-superwash wool. I think these colors will look very beautiful in a September sweater. This is, I mentioned earlier that I might buy some yarn. I may buy a mohair to go with this because I do really enjoy the feeling of a mohair with a wool yarn, but I may just use this by itself. I'm excited to have the September sweater. I've really been enjoying brioche. I showed this earlier. This project is brioche. I worked on a brioche hat. I've done a couple other things in brioche, and I've gotten a lot better at picking up dropped stitches. It's not perfect, but I think that, you know, now is my time to attempt the September sweater again. I think I'll enjoy it more this time now that I'm more experienced with brioche, and I think that this yarn will behave a little more the way that I was hoping the other yarn would in this project. I don't really have plans on the order in which I'll work on these. I have other projects that I plan on working on for other people. I have some gift knits, I have baby knits, I have for other people's babies, to be clear. I have a lot of sock yarn that I want to use for socks. I have found my sock mojo in a really real way. I've really enjoyed wearing the socks that I'm making. I want to make my boyfriend a pair of socks. He has huge feet. That'll be an undertaking. You know, so I have these other ideas of things that I would like to work on, and I'm not holding myself to, you know, any sort of rules about when I work on these projects for my Make 9 versus when I'm working on projects for others or projects for myself that are not from this list. I'm just so excited to share this list with you. I'm excited to kind of put out in the world what I've been hoping to do with my knitting in the near future, to articulate it, hold myself accountable by bringing others into this process with me, and I can't wait to share my progress with you as time goes on. I hope you have a great one. Again, Happy New Year, Happy January. I hope you're all surviving whatever cold or inclement weather you have going on in your area right now, presuming you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and I hope you have a great one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.